Hello friends, welcome to my channel and welcome to another exciting video. In today's video, I'm going to recommend 10 non-fiction history books that I really enjoyed over the course of the years. And some of the books that I'm going to recommend will fall under different subcategories of history, and I will explain what that is when I go over the list. My intention today is to really have a quick video rather than going into a lot of details for each one of the books. I will probably give a very high level introduction to the book and then move on. So I want this video to be a very short one, if you guys don't mind. So to start the list, the very first book that I'm going to recommend is Guns, Germs, and Steel, written by Jared Diamond. He's a very prominent anthropologist. And a lot of people might have heard of this book, or you might have read this book already. It's a very famous book. So Jared Diamond, he brings a new concept of why certain countries or civilizations had dominance over the others, and he really talks about having guns and immunity to certain diseases and access to better steel was a determining factor in having the power over the other civilization. Is his argument in this book. It's a very interesting book. If you guys haven't read this book, I strongly recommend it. And then the second book that I'm going to recommend is called Sapiens, written by Yuval Noah Harari. And this is another very famous book among the reading circle. And if you really want a comprehensive but very concise history of from origin to today, history of humanity, this is the book I would recommend for anybody. And there is a graphic version of this book available as well, and that is probably a good book to give it to your kids because it has a lot of good illustrations. So I recommend both. The third book I'm going to recommend in this series is it's called The Sea People, The Puzzle of Polynesia, written by Christina Thompson. This is a fantastic book. I was always interested in learning the history of Polynesian people and how all the islands of Polynesia, Micronesia, and Oceanesia got populated. I always had that question. So this book pretty much answered all the questions that I had, and it's a very well-researched book with a lot of information. So if you're interested in knowing Polynesian culture, Polynesian people, how the peopling of the Polynesian islands happened, and then this book has pretty much everything, all the scientific data, folklores, and then also, their exceptional ocean-going skills and navigation skills of the Polynesians. So this is a very interesting book. Fourth book that I'm going to recommend, it's called The Open Veins of Latin America by Eduardo Galeano. Eduardo Galeano is a Uruguayan journalist, and this book is a very it's an alternative history of Latin America, which talks about how the European powers, the moment they arrived and landed in the Caribbeans and the Latin American, South American, or even in Mexico or Central America, how the pillage and the looting started, and it went on non-stop, and even today, to some extent, it's being exploited. Is the argument in this book, and it has a lot of data which really to back the claim. And this is a very interesting book if you really want to know the effects of it's not a colonization, but when the conquistadors came to Mexico and Peru, Franciscan Pizarro or Hernan Cortes, how the pillaging and the plundering happened after they arrived is what this book talks about. So I really recommend this book. This is the fourth book I'm going to recommend. And then the fifth book is the Guns of August by Barbara Tushman. So this book is a very, very well written, comprehensive book if you really want to know or learn about the events of World War I. So this goes behind the background, how it all came to that point, and then how the war really happened and what was the aftermath. So this is a very a well-researched, one of the very well-written book that I would recommend if you guys are really interested in World War One history. And then the sixth book, actually there are two books in this in this recommendation. So the first book in that two books is called the Stalingrad. It's written by Anthony Beevor, and you cannot just stop with that book. You have to read the second book that is like a sequel to the Siege of Stalingrad, which is the Fall of Berlin. So this talks about the seldom talked about in English speaking world, seldom talked about the the conditions of the Red Army in the Eastern Front, and how the siege of Stalingrad happened, how brutal it was, and then eventually how the Red Army pushed the Nazis all the way back to Germany, and then they didn't stop until they reached Berlin. So both these books I strongly recommend because it reads like a fiction, but it's a very well written nonfiction, and then it has a lot of details and information that we don't normally know. So this is one of the World War II books, the two of them that I recommend. And then the seventh book is called King Leopold's Ghost, written by Adam Hochschild. So this is again another colonial exploitation book, but this one was really a tough book to read because it really talks about how brutal the Belgians were on the Congolese people just to extract the natural rubber, and the amount of atrocities and unspeakable crimes that were committed against the Congolese people is really enormous and brutal. So this book really brings to light all the violence that happened, and also the exploitation and the methodical exploitation, and then violation of the human rights, etc. So uh, it's a very hard book to read because whenever they talk about how children were punished in I couldn't really I struggled to go past that. So be warned, this is a very heart-rending, gut-wrenching book that you'll be reading. And then the next book is probably a very similar tone, but in a different location. So the book is called Rape of Nanking by Iris Chang. So this talks about the Japanese army's brutality, which was never reported or underreported. Uh, you can call this actually a genocide, which happened in 1937, the Sino-Japanese War, when the troops descended, in Nanking. The brutality again on the violence that really affected the children and the women of that city is unspeakable, and it has been documented and witnessed by a lot of different parties, and this book really collects all that information and gives it to us. So again, this is a very hard book to read. Just be warned, it's a very graphic. And then the ninth book that I'm going to recommend is called Beyond the Wall by Katja Hoyer. So this book it talks about the entire history in its existence, the history of East Germany. So, aka GDR or DDR, if you will. So this book really talks about how the after the end of the World War II, how East Germany was formulated, and then eventually how Berlin was walled up, and then how was the life for the normal people of East Germany, and then after the dissolution of Soviet Union, and then the East Germany wall came down. What kind of life changes people had for good or bad. So this is actually one of the books that I really enjoyed last year, and I think this book came out like a couple of years ago. But I really recommend if you really want to know more about the history of East Germany. And then the 10th book and the last book that I'm going to recommend is called The Campaigns of Alexander by Aryan. So I was really looking for a very complete um, walkthrough or narration of the campaigns of Alexander for a very long time, and I came to know that this is one of the books that everybody recommends. But be warned, this book was not written during the time of Alexander the Great. So this book, Aryan is writing after 400 years after the death of Alexander, and so there is a lot of chances for insertion, and then a lot of bias. And he is basing it off of a lot of the other sources that he claims who was actually with Alexander during the campaigns. To my disappointment, the last seventh book of this campaign is called Indica, which I was very interested in knowing, because when it comes to the Alexander's invasion, the Indian sources, they are mute. They are very silent. There is no written record of that to the level that it's talked about in the Greek side. So I was really hoping that Indica will be there, but unfortunately, I heard Indica was lost. And recently, some of the scholars, they're trying to bring it back by interpreting some other scriptures during that time. So I recommend this book. So I hope the 10 recommendations that I am bringing to you guys today, you guys will like it, and you will enjoy like I did. And if you guys have any questions, let me know on the comment section. And then also let me know if you guys have read any of these books and how did you like it. And I would like to hear from you. And I think that's it for today. And then I will come back with a similar exciting video or recommendation or reviews very soon. Until then, bye bye.